Hello, BookTube, and welcome to March Mystery Monday. this is my contribution to a venerable BookTube event, March Mystery Madness, which is now in round 5. 5 years of March Mystery Madness. It's hosted by Elizabeth at Lizzie Faye Loves Books and a whole bunch of other great booktubers. And its goal is simple: to celebrate and talk about the wonders of murder mysteries for the whole of the month of March. And they've pulled out all the stops. There are hashtags, there are Twitter and Goodreads groups, just everything. I think there's a Facebook group. There's everything. I will leave a link to the video that has all of that requisite information. And I want to regularly talk about murder mysteries. March Mystery Madness couldn't have happened at a more fortuitous time for me, because in 2020 I have been consumed with reading murder mysteries, just consumed with it. And I've been having a ball, just having a ball, reading everywhere, reacquainting myself with old writers that maybe I haven't read in decades, reading all sorts of new writers, all sorts of new kinds of murder mysteries, new templates, that sort of thing. And last Murder Mystery Monday, March Mystery Monday, we talked about what a murder mystery is. We went over some 100-year-old rules to decide what it is that we're actually talking about. And I thought that was fascinating. I reread those rules all the time, and I read whenever an author in the Strand magazine or Mystery and Suspense, whenever anybody else comes out with a new list of maybe a much more modern list of what we do and do not want in murder mysteries, what counts and what is disqualified, I gobble it right up. I love that sort of thing. It's Jesuitical, I know, but nevertheless, I've also raised the question with a lot of you. What actually counts? When we're here in this month, when we're thinking about murder mysteries, what is it that we're talking about? The sine qua non, the absolute bare minimum of a murder mystery in the general sense, in the huge umbrella that covers so many subgenres, seems to be that there's a murder. It seems one of the rules that we read last week that everybody seems to agree with, even though there are so many notable exceptions where that is not the case. One of the rules, at least for now, for the modern times, for the 21st century, one of the rules that most people seem to agree with is that nothing less than murder will count. Now, I am a huge, huge fan of the Blue Carbuncle, of the Red-Headed League. Some of my favorite Sherlock Holmes stories do not involve murder. And there are a couple of murder mysteries that more modern murder mysteries that I really like that don't involve murder. But nevertheless, I'm inclined to agree with that rule that the kind of common DNA, the genetic ancestor that all these things should have, is that someone should have died. But whether we agree on that or not, I think most of us do, there's still the question of a mystery. Even if you don't agree with the murder part of a murder mystery, you still have to agree with the mystery part. There has to be something to solve. There has to be some kind of confusion, usually intentionally sown by someone. I don't think you'd have much of a grounds for a mystery novel if it was just one misunderstanding after another. I think there has to be nefarious intent, at the very least. And if that's true, if we can basically agree that there has to be nefarious intent, and maybe that there has to be a death that is, the product of that nefarious event, and that is being altered, covered up. Someone is hiding something in order to save their own skin from retribution, from justice. If we can agree on basics like that, then you can see how the umbrella of murder mysteries that we're reading all month long would include things like, for instance, action-oriented thrillers. Even in the most brainless action-oriented thriller, there's always somebody who dies, something that needs to be figured out by the hero, something the doing of which will set one person apart from the other people in the book and make them the hero. These are very, very basic things, but I think that is the DNA of the genre that we're talking about. And I wanted to show you in this March Mystery Monday something like a TBR. Everybody's been doing their March Mystery Madness TBR, and I've been loving watching those videos. Absolutely loving just toying with all of the possibilities and the speculation and whatnot. I can't really make a March Mystery Madness TBR of my own. I plan on reading well over 30 or 35 mysteries in the course of March. I'm going to overindulge. And you can't really make a video that's 35 books long. That would be kind of tedious, even for this channel. But I wanted to show you, so this isn't everything, obviously, as you've seen. because I buy secondhand murder mysteries all the time. I wanted to show you. I want to go over. This is not complete, but this is a thumbnail of the new murder mysteries that are out in the month of March. I went through my shelves and intentionally just cleaned out March to show you. And I think these books highlight the variety that we're talking about. And there's only a couple that I've actually read. So we'll go over these, and they'll all be in one video instead of scattered throughout a million mail hauls. So the first one is from Soho Press. I imagine a lot of these are going to be. This is by Scott Phillips, and it's That Left Turn at Albuquerque. The title referring, of course, to the immortal Bugs Bunny. I should never have taken that left turn at Albuquerque. And this is, let's see here. This is, now I thought I had, well, I'll read you about it, and we'll see. You'll see what I mean. That this is, there's a huge amount of variety involved here. Something that becomes quickly apparent in Scott Phillips' latest feat of noir virtuosity, comedically titled That Left Turn at Albuquerque, is that the author doesn't much believe in criminal masterminds. Phillips also seems to delight in proving this to the readers, and there is much to enjoy in the revelation. He's compared to Carl Hyacin and Donald Westlake. And in this book, he's operating in familiar territory with impressive skill. Douglas Rigby, like Charlie Arglis from Phillips' neo-noir classic The Ice Harvest, is a slimy sort of lawyer. Unlike Arglis, Rigby is an amateur when it comes to hands-on crime. So when Rigby tries to clandestinely flip $200,000 of his last remaining client's money on a quick and easy drug deal, it's only natural to expect things to go wrong. Previously tight on funds, Rigby can't replace the embezzled money and quickly increases the potential for tragedy by further defrauding his client with a forgery scheme involving a painting from the client's art collection. So here we see, this is familiar, especially in noir territory, that the main character will be incredibly flawed. A villain, basically, in my black and white sense of the world, a villain. And it certainly is contradictory to Raymond Chandler's rules on his much more informal rule about the art of the mystery story, which is that the hero must be a good man. That down these mean streets he must sometimes go, but he himself is not mean, and this is a clear contradiction of that. The main character here is out to make a buck, to bend the law. And we've seen noir. That's a familiar thing in noir, especially city-based, modern urban noir. There have been many authors who've done this. I don't remember that I've read this author before. And as I'm sure will come as no surprise to you, I do not usually like books like that, except for the ones, and this might be one of them, where that kind of a low-life rat-fink main character discovers deep inside some hint of nobility in himself to form the highlight of the end of the book. That sometimes happens. I do like that, but this next one is much more along the lines of the thriller. But I am sure that there will be a death in here. I'm sure that there will be a crime and some sort of resolution where right triumphs over wrong. It doesn't sound like it's going to happen in this book, but this is Stop at Nothing by Michael Ledwidge. Most of these books we've seen before. I'm just putting them all in one video as a kind of quasi-TBR. And this, Michael Ledwidge is a longtime partner, a writing partner of James Patterson. So this will be more of that kind of a thriller. When a Gulfstream jet goes down in the Bahamas carrying a fortune in cash and ill-gotten diamonds, expat diving instructor Michael Gannon is the only person on scene. Assuming himself the beneficiary of a drug deal gone bad, he thinks he's home free with a sudden windfall until he realizes he forgot to ask one simple question. Who were the 6 dead men on the plane? Now, again, we seem to be in, there you have right there in that description, a quintessential murder mystery question. Who is this dead person? These dead people. Why did they die? What's the story behind their death? And who's involved? Who killed them? And who's trying to cover it up? And again, we have a hero who's a little bit on the south side of right and wrong, because he knows the money doesn't belong to him, and it sounds it anyway. He's willing to make off with it at the beginning of the book. So we will see. We will see how that goes. Next one, also. Very much in the thriller. I'm now looking at these things wondering how many of them won't be thrillers. Because that raises the question, doesn't it, of what else we're talking about. There's cozy mysteries like this, Egg Drop Dead. this is a noodle shop mystery, and we've also seen beach shack fish fry shop mysteries and dog rescue mysteries. There are a million mystery series with cats in little houses and knitting, yarning, cooking, you name it. You name it. And there are cozy mysteries like that. And we've also seen thrillers, and you've also seen regular installment type things, usually police procedurals, where the main character has occurred many times in many, many books. But what about the standalone, intricate crime, solve it kind of puzzle mystery? I don't know how many of those are here. I'm not sure how many of those are published anymore, by mainstream presses anyway. This next one is Hour of the Assassin by Matthew Quirk. And it's going to be, if I remember correctly, right along the same lines. As a Secret Service agent, Nick Averos spent a decade protecting the most powerful men and women in America and developed a unique gift, the ability to think like an assassin. Now he used that skill in a little-known but crucial job. As a red teamer, he poses as a threat, testing the security around our highest officials to find vulnerabilities before their enemies can. His latest assignment is to assess the security surrounding the former CIA director at his D.C. area home. But soon after he breaches the man's study, the home's inner sanctum, Nick finds himself entangled in a vicious crime that will shake Washington to its foundation, as all evidence points to Nick. Now, I haven't read this book, so I can't spoil it, but I think it's pretty clear that the thing he discovers is that the former CIA director is dead. And since he's the red teamer whose job it was to try to simulate an assassin breaking through the house's defenses in order to kill the man, he's naturally the number one suspect. So that starts the machinery that we're talking about here, because here, I don't know for sure, I can't spoil the book because I haven't read it. I am assuming that former CIA director is found dead. And if that's true, then there's a murderer, and there's somebody who has a very vital motive to find out what really happened. That process of detection is probably central, right, to this kind of writing, no matter what form it takes. And then this next one we saw this just recently on this channel. I don't know about. This is also noir. This is Are Snakes Necessary by Brian De Palma and Susan Lehman. I halt a little at that by Brian De Palma. I'm not really sure how much of a hand he had in this. But let's see here. When the beautiful young videographer offered to join his campaign, Senator Lee Rogers should have known better. But saying no would have taken on a stronger man than Rogers, with his ailing wife and his robust libido. Enter Barton Brock, the senator's fixer. He's already gotten rid of one troublesome young woman. How hard could this new one turn out to be? Pursued from Washington, D.C. to the streets of Paris, 18-year-old Fanny Coors knows her reputation and budding career are on the line. But what she doesn't realize is that her life might be as well. So, what do we do with something like this? This is Soho. Is it? No, this is Hard Case Crime. It's a crime novel, obviously, because she's going to see something that she shouldn't see, and she's going to be pursued well beyond the bounds of legality. She's not going to be served a writ. She's going to have a goon with a gun at her door. But what do we make of this? I mean, we would obviously have to include this as a mystery of some kind. But it sounds like, again, we're flying blind because I haven't read it, neither of you, because it's not out yet. But it sounds like there won't be any element of this that the reader doesn't know and that the participants don't know. Instead, it'll just be that one participant knows something the other participant doesn't want them to know. And how does that work? Do you know examples like that? This next one is an example of what I was talking about, a series that stars the same person having one mysterious adventure after another. This one is more forensic, it's close to the border of what a thriller might be. This is A Conspiracy of Bones by Kathy Reichs. And this is a Temperance Brennan novel. Notice how a lot of these things will say a so-and-so novel instead of a so-and-so mystery. I wonder why that is. Is that because the author's publicist or the publisher is trying for crossover appeal? And what do you prefer? Do you want them to call it a mystery? Maybe it's to downplay the fact, maybe it's to stress the fact that the mysteries aren't that important in the book. Let's see here. It's sweltering in Charlotte, North Carolina, and Temperance Brennan, still recovering from neurosurgery for an aneurysm, is battling nightmares, migraines, and what she thinks might be hallucinations when she receives a series of mysterious text messages, each containing a picture of a corpse missing its face and hands. Immediately, she's anxious to know who the dead man is and why the images were sent to her. To discover the man's identity, Temperance must go rogue and work outside the system. Her new boss holds a fierce grudge and is determined to bar her from the case. But she bulls forward anyway, even as she begins questioning her instincts and as puzzles accumulate. Was the faceless man a spy, a trafficker, a target for assassination by the government? And why was he carrying the name of a long-missing child? So you see the elements that we're talking about here, because obviously the answers to all of that list of questions that we just got are not going to be provided to the reader until the very end. We're going to watch as our main character fights to learn, to figure out the answers to those questions. So that counts as a murder mystery, doesn't it? Yes? Yes? But anyway, let's move on. This is another book that makes the same nomenclature decision, and it's another book, a long book in a series with his main character. This is C.J. Box's Long Range. As you can see, it's a Joe Pickett novel. Not a Joe Pickett mystery, even though Joe Pickett is going to be involved in trying to solve a mystery all throughout this book. I wonder about that, the marketing decisions there. Joe Pickett is a Wyoming game warden. And you would think that that would be fairly boring novels of him doing lots of driving and punctuating that with occasional bouts of paperwork. But C.J. Box manages to fill these things. This is a terrific, terrific series. Let's see here. When Joe Pickett is asked to join the rescue effort of a victim of a startling grizzly attack, nothing startling about that. 600-pound killing machines. All I want to do is rip people apart. He reluctantly leaves his district behind. So again, like with Conspiracy of Bones, we have the main character outside of their power structure. One survivor of the Grizzlies' rampage tells a bizarre story, but just as Joe begins to suspect the attack is not what it seems, he is brought home by an emergency on his own turf. Someone has targeted a prominent local judge, shooting at him from a seemingly impossible distance. While the judge was not hit, his wife was severely wounded, and it is up to Joe to find answers and the shooter. And you see there, the two mysteries are braided together, probably very closely. I haven't read this book, but I would hope that C.J. Box makes those connected, those two things. Right when our main character is suspecting that a grizzly attack is maybe not what it seems, that there may be some human wrongdoing involved, another piece of wrongdoing happens. That those things you'd like it. That would be satisfying if they were connected. Excuse me. The next one is I think probably on this list one of the rare examples of a more classic murder mystery. Although I could be wrong. Again, I haven't read it yet, so we'll see. This is a Fandoran mystery by Boris Akunin. It's called She, Lover of Death. And I think this is closer to just an ordinary whodunit. Naive young Masha Mironova arrives in Moscow at the turn of the century with a modest inheritance and a determination to shed her provincial Siberian upbringing. As soon as she alights in Moscow, she becomes Columbine, a reckless and daring young woman with eccentric outfits and a pet snake worn as a necklace. In her quest for danger and passion, Columbine soon discovers the Lovers of Death, a small group of poets enraptured by death who gather nightly at the home of their leader, the Doge, to conduct seances to determine Death's next chosen lover. Once named at a seance, the chosen member must wait 3 signs from death before taking his own life. The string of suicides resulting from the group has drawn attention, becoming fodder for extensive media coverage and widespread hysteria in Moscow. As the group's numbers dwindle, a mysterious newcomer appears, revealed to the reader as Fandoran, our main character. Thanks to the presence of his trusty Japanese sidekick, Fandoran begins to investigate the suicides while also trying to convince the members that death is neither beautiful nor poetic and should not be sought out. So our hero is involved in the crime. He is undercover. But that sounds a little more conventional than this string of thrillers that we're getting. What's the word that I want? It's still complicit. It's still complicit because there's still a death, a number of them in this case. And the fact that Van Doren would be involved leads me to think, again, I'm extrapolating on a book I haven't read, but it leads me to think there's something else going on in the Lovers of Death than just a string of suicides. We shall see. I shall report back. Then this next one is another in a long-running series, a slightly more tongue-in-cheek, slightly closer to something like Lord Peter Wimsey, where there's an element of humor involved. None of these things have any humor. They're not supposed to. This one is Deanna Rayburn, and this is a murderous relation. This is a Veronica Speedwell mystery. We've seen this before on this channel. This involves Jack the Ripper. Autumn 1888, of course, the infamous year 1888. Veronica Speedwell and her colleague Stoker are asked by Lady Wellingtonia Beauclerk to stop a potential scandal so explosive it threatens to rock the monarchy. And if you know anything about Jack the Ripper and the various outlandish theories that have attached to the crimes ever since they were committed, you know, if the royals are mentioned, you know just what to expect. Prince Albert Victor is just what to expect. Prince Albert Victor is a regular visitor to the most exclusive private club in London, and the proprietress, Madame Aurore, has received an expensive gift that can be traced back to the prince. Lady Welly would like Veronica and Stoker to retrieve it from the club before scandal can break. Worse yet, London is being terrorized by what will become the most notorious and elusive serial killer in history, Jack the Ripper, and Lady Welly suspects the prince may be responsible. Veronica and Stoker reluctantly agree to go undercover in Madame Aurore's high-class brothel, where a body soon turns up. Secrets are swirling around Veronica and the royal family, and it is up to Veronica and Stoker to find the truth before it is too late for all of them. So once again, we have our heroes going undercover, and in this case, it's historical, so you know a lot. Readers going in here will know a lot, or a quick perusal of Wikipedia will show you that Jack the Ripper was never conclusively identified, that he was never brought to justice, that there were X number of murders, and here's when they took place, and here's who the victims were. And here's some of the speculation. I'm sure that the Jack the Ripper case, in its outline, will get a thorough trot around the park in this book. And I'm sure that it'll be entertaining. Deanna Rayburn is known to me. I like her books, so I will get to this in time. But yeah, it is. Because She, Lover of Death doesn't count. This is our first, at least quasi-historical murder mystery, that involves real people, that involves real events. She, Lover of Death is just a story the author made up that happens to be set 100 years ago. But A Dangerous Relation is about a real case. It's about real historical people. It comes, I think, as close as we're going to come to that huge body of murder mysteries where historical figures solve crimes, where Jane Austen or Benjamin Franklin or Aristotle solve crimes in their spare time. I don't think anyone's ever done a series in which Prince Albert Victor solves crimes, and Prince Eddie wouldn't have been anybody's ideal choice for a sleuth. There was a very good murder mystery about a typical James Bond omnicompetent Superman figure solving a murder mystery at the time of Prince Eddie. But I don't think anyone's ever starred the Prince in it. And then this next one is a work in translation. This is, I think, a couple of years getting to English from its native language. Oh my, am I going to be able to find this in a hurry? No, probably not. Oh yes, here we go. Oh, okay. Well, no, the Dutton hardcover here says 2020, so maybe this isn't. Maybe I have that wrong. Anyway, this is a Department Q novel. This is Jussi Adler Olsen, Victim 2117. So let's see what kind of variation we're going to get here. The newspaper refers to the body of as Victim 2117, the 2,117th refugee to die in the Mediterranean Sea. But to three people, the unnamed victim is so much more, and the death sets off a chain of events that throws Department Q, Copenhagen's cold case division led by Detective Carl Mork, into a deeply dangerous and deeply personal case, a case that not only reveals dark secrets about the past, but has deadly implications for the future. So this is our first example. The Temperance Brennan and the C.J. Box books don't count. This is our first example of a police procedural. an explicit police procedural where there is nobody working off the reservation, where it's a department that will solve the crime. They might have a leader, a charismatic genius at the head, but it'll be teamwork all throughout the book. But even though it's a thriller and ripped from the headlines topicality, there is still a question here of who this dead person is, and which of the people that claims to know victim 2117 might know the real one, or do any of them, or have they all been deceived? It's so once again you have a death involved in the story. I don't know if that's too reductive, but I've been thinking a lot about murder mysteries in the course of March, try and figure out what these things are. It's part of the fun of me investigating this whole genre in 2020. But anyway, this next one is by John McMahon, and it is The Evil Men Do. And again, you can tell this one doesn't even mention any recurring character or anything. So this is going to be a straight up police procedural thriller, probably. A hard-nosed real estate baron is dead, and detectives P.T. Marsh and Remy Morgan learn there's a long list of suspects. Mason Falls, Georgia may be a small town, but Ennis Fultz had filled it with professional rivals, angry neighbors, and a wronged ex-wife. And when Marsh realizes that this potential murder might be the least of his troubles, he begins to see what happens when ordinary people become capable of evil. As Marsh and Morgan dig into the case, it becomes clear that Fultz's death was not an isolated case of revenge. It may be part of a dark web of crimes connected to an accident that upended Marsh's life a couple of years earlier, and that now threatens the life of a young child. Marsh veers dangerously off track as his search for clues becomes personal, and brings him to a place where a man's good deeds turn out to be more dangerous than his worst crimes. So we have some of the bits and pieces that we have seen all along here. We have someone going off the reservation, someone going away from his power structure in order to go outside the law to deliver a kind of justice, maybe, we hope. We have a team. The team is part of a power structure. They have the authority to investigate crimes. I don't know if they're recurring characters, but there's obviously a mystery at the heart of this thing. And then we'll do this last one here. This is the last one for just this very abbreviated March Mystery Madness TBR here. And this one is not technically a TBR because I've already read it. In fact, I've already reviewed it. This is Trace Elements by Donna Leone. This is an Inspector Brunetti mystery set in Venice. And it is very much a police procedural. Very much a recurring character, two recurring characters in this case. There's a whole host of supporting characters who are regular features in these books. Brunetti is a cop. He has been a cop for a long time. In this book, he thinks about maybe retiring someday, but it doesn't happen. In this book, he is fully able to question people, to pull evidence, to pull public records, and that puts a different spin on it than some of the books that we've seen here. We've seen some where the sleuths are amateurs. They don't have access to the power structures or the information of the official law enforcement, and might be considered to be meddling or even criminal if they try to acquire that information. They're totally outside. They have to figure it out on their own, with or without the help of the law. Sometimes in some of the cases that we've seen, without. Brunetti's not like that. He examines people and they let fall too much, or he puts two and two together in a better way than the criminals pulled them apart, and that's how the mystery is solved in the course of this book. There's a two-pronged mystery in here. It's very, very well done. That does it for my March Mystery Madness, March Mystery Monday TBR. This was mainly meant to show the variety involved here, although I'm noticing some things that are missing. I don't have many cozy mysteries. I don't have any romantic suspense, for instance, of the type that Sarah loves over at Steeped in Books. I don't have many examples in the way of here is a crime, and the classic thing that we talked about with the rules last time, that may be just by the board nowadays, especially now in the advent of television, of binge-watching television. Maybe those rules have been blurred or broken. For instance, we don't have many examples here of what was repeated over and over again in those rules, and also in the rules we read 2 years ago, which is that in a murder mystery, all the clues should be in front of the reader at all times. The reader should, with sufficient attention, be able to solve the crime on their own before the sleuth does. Doesn't sound like many of these things are going to do that at all. they'll still be entertaining, but it brings it. I want to wrap up this video by raising the question to you: where do murder mysteries stand for you? Are you more comfortable reading new releases, or are you happier with the far more formulaic standards of 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago? Do you need a murder to be in your murder mystery? Do you need? Obviously, I would think you would need someone to do the detecting and to do it better than everybody else. Do you need that? One character? Or are you perfectly okay with, for instance, Scandinavian noir often has a whole police team solving crimes together, rather conspicuously together, because in most Scandinavian crime that I have read, each individual member in the squad room is too stupid to tie their own shoelaces, much less solve a murder. They pretty much have to act in unison, like salmon. but do you want that in your murder mysteries, or do you prefer a single protagonist who's maybe unrealistically brilliant? I want to hear it all. I want to hear it all. I'm gonna wrap this up for now. This was just a glimpse of the mysteries. The hardcover mysteries are coming out in March, and I will be back next Monday to talk about something else. I have something else in mind to talk about for March Mystery Madness. So I will leave a link to all the information down below. Never too late to jump in and start reading murder mysteries. But in the meantime, I'm going to wrap this up. So I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.